All right, take a listen to this.
When we talk about making America great again, it's important to think about what made America great in the first place. Now, one obvious answer to that is that America became great by kind of looking inward and attending to its own problems, going back to the founders. But that is not only not entirely true, it's not true at all. Right after the American founding, Thomas Jefferson found out that there were these Barbary pirates in the Middle East. Now, they weren't attacking America, they weren't starting a war over here, but Jefferson basically dispatched an armed force to clobber them, to beat the heck out of them. Why? Because they were disrupting our interests, they were disrupting our trade, they were hurting our position in the world. So even though we had this infant democracy, clobbering bad guys is something that we started doing from the very beginning.
Now look, whether you believe America should be the most isolationist nation in the world, or whether you believe America should be the most interventionist nation in the world, is your affair. My interest here is purely historical, and I'm here to tell you that what you just heard about the Barbary states, which incidentally were in Northwest Africa, not the Middle East, is the exact opposite of reality. For starters, anyone remotely familiar with their history knows that the Barbary corsairs were state-sponsored pirates, sanctioned by Muslim rulers who profited immensely by raiding European coasts and ships and enslaving any Christian they could get their hands on. A business supported by Islamic law and policy, no less. The pirates went everywhere, even distant Iceland, to collect and sell slaves to fellow Muslims. Second, the claim that these pirates weren't attacking America is utterly absurd. Right after the American colonies won independence from Britain, they lost British naval protection. As a result, American merchant vessels became juicy targets for the seaborne jihad. Starting in 1785, Barbary pirates began capturing American ships, such as the Maria and Dauphin, and enslaving their crews. These sailors suffered horrendously. As one American captain, Richard O'Brien, wrote in a desperate letter to Thomas Jefferson, "Our sufferings are beyond our expression or your conception." If you're interested, I go into some disturbing details concerning what Barbary pirates did to American and European slaves in Sword and Scimitar, Chapter 8. Anyway, the newly formed United States government responded by paying ransoms and tributes, known in Islamic law as jizya, to release whichever sailors they could and stop the kidnappings. These payments amounted to a staggering 16% of the federal budget at one point. In other words, the US initially tried diplomatic negotiations and tribute payments to keep the peace in line with what European powers had also done for generations. Then in 1786, after meeting with a Muslim ambassador in an effort to develop friendly relations, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams sent a remarkably telling letter to Congress. They wrote, quote, "We took the liberty to make some inquiries concerning the grounds of their, Barbary's, pretensions to make war upon nations who had done them no injury. And we observed that we considered all mankind as our friends, who had done us no wrong, nor had given us any provocation. The ambassador answered us that it was founded on the laws of their prophet, that it was written in their Quran, that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority were sinners, that it was their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they could be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, and that every Muslim who should be slain in battle was sure to go to paradise." When, however, the Muslim pirates demanded a much greater tribute than agreed to, talks collapsed and Congress debated. The majority ended up siding with John Adams. "We ought not to fight them at all," said he, "unless we determine to fight them forever." So Jefferson's eventual decision to deploy naval forces in 1801, that is, the First Barbary War, came after years of attacks on American vessels and the enslavement of their crews, after years of failed diplomacy, escalating demands from Barbary, and finally an outright declaration of jihad from Tripoli against the United States. In short, the Barbary Wars were not about the founding fathers clobbering bad guys who had disrupted their position in the world, as D'Souza says. Rather, it was a war dedicated to protecting its citizens from enslavement and putting an end to extortionist demands of tribute. Nor, alas, was the war a quick triumph, lasting as it did 5 years. The fledgling American Navy suffered setbacks, including the humiliating capture of the USS Philadelphia and its crew in 1803. The war was purely defensive, reluctant, and reactive, not some early example of American interventionism or imperialism, as D'Souza would have us believe. And that's just the plain old truth. like it or not. Bye.